Throughout the Second World War, the leader of the Third Reich systematically fired his most seasoned generals. Despite having no formal strategic training, he took supreme personal command of the German armed forces. He justified this power grab by claiming that formal staff college education produced overly theoretical minds that would fail under pressure. He believed his own instincts were far superior, forged in what he called the University of Life in the trenches. That supposed university was a very specific patch of dirt. For 4 years, he served as a dispatch runner in the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry, commonly known as the List Regiment. This was a unit of untrained volunteers. When thrown into combat in 1914, they were decimated, reduced to a third of their strength in a matter of days. The catastrophic global strategy of the Third Reich was not designed by a mastermind. It was designed by a man projecting the narrow, localized trauma of a single World War I infantry regiment onto the entire world. The List Regiment got its baptism by fire in 1914 Flanders. The terrain was a nightmare. The water table sat just below the surface, turning the landscape into a labyrinth of drainage ditches and thick, inescapable mud. Advancing through that geography proved lethal. The regiment suffered massive casualties, bogging down in a defensive stalemate that offered zero tactical advantage to the attackers. In 1940, the German High Command proposed invading France through that same terrain in Flanders. The former corporal rejected the plan. This map illustrates the change. Instead of sending his armor into the Flanders trap he remembered so vividly, he ordered a massive tank thrust to the south, pushing through the dense, supposedly impassable Ardennes forest. The Ardennes offensive was a staggering success. It fatally validated his arrogance, convincing him that his trench instincts were superior to the theories of his trained generals. Those trench instincts were also shaped by defeat. In July 1918, the List Regiment suffered a brutal rout, forced into a headlong retreat. The Allies crushed them using a coordinated combined arms tactic. They synchronized creeping artillery with low-flying French fighter bombers, and a new weapon the regiment was unprepared for: Renault light tanks. This trauma accelerated Hitler's enthusiastic adoption of combined arms tactics during the military rebuilding of the 1930s. He championed the development of blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Its core components, fast-moving panzer columns supported by dive bombers, were a direct reflection of the exact weapons that had defeated him in 1918. The defining offensive doctrine of the Second World War was born from the psychological scar of a corporal running from early tanks and biplanes. But the List Regiment had a geographic limitation. They fought exclusively in France and Belgium, never seeing the Eastern Front. In the First War, the East was often viewed as a soft option, manned by poorly equipped Russian troops. This created a bias that the corporal carried with him into power. During the 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union, he applied that outdated Western Front logic to a theater of war that had evolved beyond his personal experience. This bias affected even basic equipment priorities. Because the standard bolt-action carbine had been sufficient for the regiment's successes in the West, he saw no urgent need to move to mass submachine gun production. In the Russian winter, his men found their rifles frozen and failed, while Soviet forces mowed them down with robust, frost-resistant automatic weapons. This hubristic underestimation of that army, born from a World War I blind spot, set the stage for the catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad. The corporal's frontline service ended in October 1918. During an attack near Ypres, he was caught in a cloud of mustard gas and temporarily blinded. He was evacuated to a military hospital in Pomerania. This meant he spent the final weeks of the conflict hundreds of miles away, isolated from the physical and moral collapse of the German army in the field. When he learned of the armistice from a hospital bed, the shock caused a psychological breakdown. By his own account, he suffered a second bout of blindness upon hearing the news. Because he hadn't witnessed his army fail in combat, he eagerly absorbed the stab-in-the-back myth. This false narrative claimed the military was never defeated, but was betrayed by politicians and subversives at home. What began as a coping mechanism for a blinded soldier became the core ideological engine that propelled his vengeful rise to power. For an aimless drifter, the List Regiment provided his first true sense of belonging. It was a surrogate family of radicalized believers. Upon taking power, he elevated his former trench comrades, men like Rudolf Hess, into a powerful inner clique to help run the Third Reich. No military decision made by the Supreme Commander between 1939 and 1945 was free from the echoes of that single regiment. The global conflict was shaped by a man with the power to refight his own localized World War I on a global stage, turning the narrow prejudices of a corporal into a worldwide catastrophe.